Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Welcome to the Meet the Pathfinder Iconics panel. We've put together a superstar panel, and also I'm here. I am Eric Mona. I am the publisher and chief creative officer at Paizo, and seated. Well, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. We'll start with the gentleman to my right.
I'm Wayne Reynolds, and I'm an artist for Pathfinder.
And I'm Sarah Robinson, and I'm creative director at Paizo.
So one of the things we wanted to do today was take you guys inside the process of basically art directing the Pathfinder iconic characters. So Pathfinder, ever since the very beginning, has had a representative character for each of the character classes, and actually originated with these folks as well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, back on Dungeon Magazine. We were in charge of Dragon and Dungeon Magazine back in the day. And really, the idea of iconic characters came out of essentially a time-cutting measure more than anything else. When you're on a monthly magazine, deadline is kind of conquers all, and one of the things that we were noticing is, you know, we would, as the editors and writers, would put together an art order and say something like, oh yeah, let's do a ranger fighting a paladin, but the artists who would work on our game, we're not always lucky to have an artist like Wayne who's a gamer and understands the genre, and so sometimes you'd get letters back saying like, what's a ranger, or maybe you'd get like Smokey the Bear in a picture or something like that, and so we said, you know, instead of describing a different ranger every time, let's put together like a list of characters, one of each class, and then we can just say the ranger and the wizard are in a dungeon or whatever, and it will be the same characters each time, and then that will help with identifying Dungeon Magazine as a brand, because you'd see the same characters and all that. But ironically, it did just kind of start as like, well, this will save us a bunch of time. And what happened then is Wayne did some really amazing illustrations of those dungeon iconic characters. Remember that, Wayne?
Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
And what happened instantly?
I think that was 2005.
Yeah, it was a long time, because we were all very cherubic at that time. But
I was still innocent.
I think you still had long hair, my friend.
I still had long hair. I
was only 3 years out of it myself. Yeah. So almost immediately, the readers of the magazine started writing to Paizo and saying, you know, oh, these guys are really cool. What's their backstory? What are these characters' names? And that was about the time WotC cut our legs out from under us and canceled the magazines. And I didn't want to put more money into backing up their intellectual property at that point, and we knew we were going to be working on Pathfinder. So one of the things that that we kind of worked on together was, we said, we know if we have these iconic characters for our new Pathfinder Adventure Path, which took some of the most popular adventure format from Dungeon and brought it to a better, more durable format, higher, you know, art budget and all that. We knew we'd do these iconic characters, and we knew people would want to know who they were from the very beginning. And so, unlike Dungeon, where the iconics, although they were beautiful, and I think some of those designs, you know, would look great even today, that was kind of a gimmick in a way. And the iconic characters for Pathfinder were part of the kind of bedrock of the brand from the very beginning. So speaking of the very beginning, let's take a look. I'm going to go alphabetically through all of the Pathfinder iconic characters, show you some preliminary sketches on the screen here, and then Wayne and Sarah can jump in and talk, and I'll talk, and we'll all talk, and then we'll, because, you know what, because there are so many of these, there's 12 of these, and there's a lot of illustrations in here, rather than saving all the questions till the end, maybe we'll give a moment for questions for each of the sets if anyone has them. And if you don't, that's cool too. So the first slide that I would like to see, there you go, is some early, well, not that early. I mean, you can see this is the 7th take on Pathfinder Goblins for 2nd edition.
Is it the 7th take? Wow.
That's what it says, as if I'm getting my Roman numerals correct.
Version 2.
So this is the 2nd take. Wayne's like, I don't remember doing 7 goblins. Actually, Wayne kind of nailed the goblin in one back in the day. It was on the cover of the very first volume of Pathfinder Adventure Path. Sarah, do you want to take us into the joy that was the graphic design challenge of the first volume of the Pathfinder Adventure Path?
Yeah, we had to get it done like in a week.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. So we had a moment where the person who had put together the person who was the head art director on Dungeon and who had done the logo for Pathfinder and some of the very preliminary design ordered a couple of pieces, but it was still very much coming into place. And there was a period of time where VALEROS, which was the first, the fighter, was on the first volume of Pathfinder Adventure Path, and then the background image with the goblins. I don't know how you felt, Sarah, but there was a moment there where I felt like that was like the only island of stability and incredible chaos. And then Sarah managed to pull off, the magazine and like the art direction of the magazine because she moved into that place. She pulled that off in like 2 weeks, teaching her boss a dangerous lesson. And so kind of the rest is history. But so it all started with this goblin. And Wayne, you've talked about it before, but can you give us a couple bits on the shape of the goblin head and how that whole thing came about?
Yeah, I spoke yesterday about
the
origins of the goblin and where the inspiration came from. So some of you who I recognise from yesterday will have heard the story of where the inspiration for the goblin heads come from, which came from a bath sponge. It's kind of in the bath. There's like this oval sponge, and I kind of squished it in half to make a mouth. And, kind of like going, Wayne, I'm going to kill you. And I thought, oh, if that had teeth, that'd be really scary. And that's where the goblin heads come from. It's my bath sponge with teeth.
Also green or gray, generally speaking, would you say?
Yeah. It was, I think it was a gray
before or after.
Yeah,
depends. All right. So the goblin was maybe one of the first sketches that we did for 2E, I would say, in terms of that time we had you come out and do all that concept art. We flew Wayne out to the United States and to Seattle, and he spent a couple weeks with us in the office, working with 3 weeks. It was actually it was such a joyful time. And so Wayne would be sitting in on some of our creative meetings, and he would then go to his artist's room and sketch.
My cupboard.
And which might be Sarah's office now that I'm thinking about it. That's ironic, yeah. What? So anyway, so Wayne would come back at the end of the day with like a pile of drawings, or maybe just one awesome drawing or whatever, and we would talk it through. And the goblin didn't take much because you'd kind of nailed it before, but it was important to get this preliminary art done because with the next slide, this was, I believe, the first painted thing that's truly of the second edition Pathfinder era. So we knew goblins because Wayne had done such a great job designing them, because James Jacobs had done such a great job, our creative director, putting goblin songs and a lot of the goblin lore. Goblins hate dogs, or they're scared of dogs, and they hate dogs and they're scared of horses and all that fun stuff. That really, Pathfinder #1 was the thing that when people responded so positively to it, we knew we weren't going to have to shut down our company. So I think that was a very good sort of internal moment for us. And what we wanted to do with Pathfinder originally was to create something that was familiar but fresh at the same time. And James and I were talking in the first volume about what do we want to have the monster be. And we talked about maybe kobolds, but we were doing an adventure called Crown of the Kobold King at that time, so we didn't want to double up on kobolds. But we wanted kind of a bone simple fantasy monster that we could kind of adopt and make our own, because that's what we felt we were doing with the Pathfinder rules, is kind of taking something familiar but adding more depth to it and adding more options and interest. And so when we were looking at what ancestries to put in second edition and we wanted to add something, it made a lot of sense to add the thing that was kind of emblematic of the Pathfinder brand, and that every time we would do an adventure where you'd play goblins, people would love it. So it was imperative that we get a good goblin, and here is the painted, not anybody in particular, but that one is a generic. Now, they have already advanced. I will advance. This is FUMBUS. So I do not have a black and white sketch, but Sarah, Wayne, why don't you tell us a little bit about this wonderful gentleman?
We changed it.
Yeah.
So.
Because originally he had a very high neck.
Yeah, he had a collar that came kind of just below his nose.
You can sort of see the remnants of that.
Yeah. And gorgeous. I told Wayne that it was kind of important to see his face because, he's going to be a new iconic, and that's what we wanted to showcase. So that was only kind of the major change that I had.
Yeah. It was important as well. You felt it was important to kind of show his
neck a little bit.
So you kind of had that sort of football head kind of goblin, which is sort of very, very iconic for the kind of goblin race. So it needed to, at a glance, it needed to still look like a goblin. So if I'd have continued with this sort of high neck, we may have lost. Sarah and I work pretty well together in that, I trust her instincts completely. So if Sarah says, something doesn't quite look right, I just like, right, okay, then it doesn't look right and it needs changing, because Sarah knows this stuff.
So Wayne, how early did the goggles come into play in your concepting of this character?
Pretty much straight away. Yeah. If he's gonna be an alchemist, then let's stick some goggles on there.
I love how it wraps around his ears too. He doesn't have that strap on the back because it's a weird head.
The original medieval glasses had these loops on them, so that just kind of like go around your ears. So I thought, okay, let's do something like that. And FUMBUS has lots of little details on him. So he's got like a baby cockatrice's skull.
Where is that?
That's just around his neck.
Oh, sweet.
He's got a bezoar around his waist.
Everyone in here knows what a bezoar is, right?
You know what a bezoar is?
Wayne, tell him it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty disgusting. So a bezoar is like a collection of condensed hair and matter that you find in animals' stomach, and it kind of like clumps there and becomes solid like a stone. And they kind of cut them out, and in the past it's an alchemical cure for poison. So if you drink poison, apparently the cure was you ate a bezoar.
Not endorsed by Paizo.
Cure. And some humans, you can get a bezoar in your stomach. I've no idea what you need to do in order to get a bezoar, what you've been doing,
but you can drink as much poison as you want. All right. Does anyone have a question about FUMBUS the Alchemist before I move on to the next character? Okay, cool. The next character then is AMIRI. This is the first edition illustration of AMIRI. There was no first edition illustration of FUMBUS, so now we're in the true updates from the old version of the Iconics. And Wayne, I wonder, and Sarah as well, in a general sense, not specific to each individual Iconic, but was there a guiding principle in the design sensibility of second edition Iconics versus, say, first edition Iconics? What was the scope of the change? What were you thinking when you were going into each of these projects? Not any individual one, but could we talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think the only direction I gave Wayne was we wanted to keep him recognizable, but maybe change a few little things that maybe were kind of bugging us or that needed to change. So I think AMIRI kind of basically stayed the same a little bit. Maybe Wayne changed the little things that was bugging him for the longest time, and had this chance to make some corrections.
Itches that needed scratching, really. And one of the things that bugged me about AMIRI at the time is I gave her kind of like half plate armor, and that's not a barbarian class armor. So I wanted to fix that.
Nice.
So,
I bet when we stat her up, we call that hide armor.
Oh, okay.
Right, because you can see it's like plates of a hardened leather, animal hide.
Right.
See, we often
that works.
It's cheaper to change words than art. Wayne, take it from me. So let's get a look at the sketch. So here we have a turnaround on AMIRI. We wanted to get fronts and backs this time for sure. Did we ever even officially do the backs of the first edition ones? I don't think so.
I did color versions of some of them. And then I kind of ran out of time. Because the finished artwork that went in the book took precedence.
Knowing the era of the company, we probably just about ran out of money at the same time, so that's good. So here we have AMIRI. Did the sword change much, would you say, Wayne?
No,
it's pretty much the same.
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, with a lot of these, we'd say like, okay, what do we want to update? And then we'd open the picture and be like, that's badass. Originally, we don't really need to change much. I do think that this version of AMIRI, and if we could advance 2 slides real quick to the color version. I'll get back to the equipment in just a second. She does look, she looks thinner. than she did before. She also looks to me a little bit more haggard, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense because she's flipping off into a rage every few minutes.
Yeah,
and at the time, in the rules, and I'm not sure that this got to you or whatever, but at the time in the rules that there was a lot more going on with the fatigue mechanic, and so you'd rage and then you'd get kind of tired, and you'd rage and you get kind of tired, and so yeah, I can see a little bit of that, whether intentional or otherwise, in this version.
I wanted to make her just a little bit more wiry, and also with some of the feedback that I was getting about female representation, I kind of wanted to change her body shape. Right. So she's the original version. She's kind of hourglass, and I just wanted to get away from that. So yeah, I wanted to make her rangy and thinner and just a little bit more feral, really, because she's not a nice character. She's not kind of like glowing with health, and initially when I was painting her, she had kind of like a darker complexion, and it just blended with the kind of hide armor, and I started lightening it, and so yeah, she had lighter skin.
That is very interesting. Yeah. Let's go back one slide to the AMIRI equipment page. So Wayne, while he was doing these iconic characters, not only did we ask him to do the full turnaround, so we got the front and the back, which is nice because in first edition you might notice every once in a while that like the backs of the characters are not always 100% consistent because we didn't have a control image from Wayne. So we wanted to do that, but we also wanted to get really into the nitty-gritty on some of this equipment. In the 10 years since Pathfinder first came out, we've had computer games, we've had toys, we've had miniatures and all that. So there's other folks doing your characters, and it's important that they do it the way that looks credibly like it's your character, right? It doesn't have to be exact. We kind of like the idea that sometimes artists bring a little bit of their own flair to stuff. But at the end of the day, they're drawing something that there is sort of a platonic ideal of, and that is represented by some of these equipment charts. Anything stand out on this page of equipment that has a story behind it? Or what are these notches on the hand axe? Remember?
They're just kind of decoration. The hand axe is it's kind of loosely based on like a cross between a sort of European hand axe and a tomahawk. So there's that sort of aspect to it, and I think I'd found a historical version of a tomahawk that had similar kind of chevrons notched into it, but the chevrons mimic the metal panels. So you can see the metal panels. Oh yeah,
okay, so if we can jump to the slide with the color again, and just kind of toggle back and forth. You guys see that chevrons on the skirt there on the front, in the brown skirt?
And then got two bronze rectangles hanging from the second belt that have chevrons cut into it. Yeah, they're just there for decoration,
right?
And they kind of like mimic those. And I think one of the interesting things about AMIRI's armor, and people go, well, that's not very practical there, because they all are important.
Yes, let's address that.
Isn't that
just a target?
I mean,
she's got no armor in her belly. Isn't she going to get stabbed and killed in the first fight? Yeah, so what were you thinking?
I mean, first of all, to kind of set the parameters, is this is a fantasy game. This is not real life. This is a game based on imagination, where hexapodal lizards breathe fire and people shoot ice out of their fingertips without getting frostbite. So the laws of science and physics gets broken on a fairly regular basis. So taking this in mind, AMIRI's, the idea behind AMIRI is that, she has a great sword. And I'd been looking at forms of combat using two-handed weapons and two-handed axes and things like that. And some of the earlier forms, there's accounts from the Battle of Hastings about Huskars walking forward with great axes or Dane axes, and they're swinging them in a figure eight in front of them. And this figure eight, effectively, as it's moving, creates a barrier in front. So the Huskars weren't getting hit in their torsos. They were getting hit on their arms and their legs, because that's the area where the opponents were landing blows. They couldn't land blows in that, what I'd say, that dangerous cone in front of you, because the axe is moving so fast. And the axe was moving so fast, there's an account of the axe head severing through a Norman knight's mailed leg, the gambeson underneath, the saddle he was sitting on, and the horse. So the kind of the speeds that were achieved with these weapons was absolutely uncanny. And you may get people going, well, I'd wait for my opening. It's like, okay, well, good luck there.
Your opening is one of your own arteries.
Opening. Yeah. So that was the idea behind AMIRI, in that, she's kind of gone, well, I've got this great sword, and I'm swinging this in a figure 8 in front of me. So I'm going to protect the areas where I'm most going to get hit. Also, it's a barbarian mentality as well, that she's kind of saying, come on, look, I'm exposed here. I got no armor. If you think you can take me, come on, the target's here, go for it. AMIRI's still alive. She's there. So that's got to tell you something.
Awesome. All right, so any questions about AMIRI? Yeah.
Many of us know that.
Yes, yeah.
How much direction did you give her personalities and art?
A fair amount. We, I think we sent them the Meet the Iconics backstory that we did for AMIRI. I believe we sent them the Pathfinder Origins comic book issue that I wrote about AMIRI's backstory, and our franchise manager Mark Moreland was working really closely with them. Originally, if I'm remembering correctly, originally kind of some of the first vocal reads on the thing was like a little over the top, angry all the time, like, you know, there's still some of that in there, but it was pretty extra. And so we just kind of asked them to tone it down a little bit, particularly when she's not raging. But I think they captured her spirit pretty well. Do you think so? Yeah, that is pretty cool. You know, I mean, when we started working with Owlcat, they let us know that they were interested in putting an iconic character in with their mix of characters, and you know that. In the beginning of any sort of relationship, especially when it's involving an adaptation of existing creative work, there's a little bit of a period of time where you don't really know each other and you're kind of playing footsie a little bit. And I think from their perspective, they wanted to make sure that the companions that are in the game are things that served kind of the game, and and they made some interesting, really Pathfinder-y choices, which is kind of cool, but it's not the iconic characters. It's not, the game isn't the game of the iconic characters. AMIRI, I think, because geographically lived a little bit closer to that area, being from the realm of the Mammoth Lords, I think that they just liked that idea. And honestly, I think they just thought she was cool and wanted a barbarian, and they're right about both of those things. So, yeah. So, and then, but we're like, okay. Where's VALEROS? Where are the Hell Knights? Where's the rest of it? You know, and some of that made it in, and some of it's going to wait for future stuff. But I'm pretty confident they can adapt any of these characters at this point, so that should be really fun. All right, so let's go to the next one, which is Lem. This is the original. Here is our bard. Wayne, Sarah, any thoughts on the original Lem? Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, like, if it's not broken, don't fix it, kind of. I do think that when we did the, and Wayne, I don't think you were the one who did it, or maybe you did. Did you do the Mythic Lem? Was he on the cover of Mythic Adventures, or was that a different artist design? So that one had, like, it was the super high level version of Lem, and he had like a sweet, stylish jacket that was a little bit different than the one that he had as a default. So I think that kind of locked in my head that this guy's like a little bit of a fashion horse, you know, and he's a I don't know why I would have thought that. Yeah, so here he is, original. So then here's the sketch. Yeah. And let's talk about the sketch a little bit. Again, it ain't that broken, but even just looking at this, I can see some differences that play into some of the concepting we were doing.
He needed halfling up a bit. So he needed to be brought into line with the Pathfinder version of halflings. And Pathfinder versions of halflings are not like other versions of halflings that you may have seen before. So we definitely changed the body type and the head shape of what I'd call turnip head. So it's kind of got the thin chin with a kind of like a larger head They've got wider mouths, and they've got regular shaped eyes. Their ears are rounded. That was one of the things we needed to kind of nail down.
That was a change.
Yeah. Do
so
halflings have pointed ears?
In first
or rounded
edition,
ears?
the halflings had pointed ears and the gnomes had rounded ears. And I'd like to say that was 100% consistent in every illustration. I think it was mostly consistent. But when we were starting to look at profile and like the silhouette of these characters and what were the kind of ancestral indicators, we really kind of realized that gnomes were the ones who should be more angular and have more pointed bits and be a little bit more alien, and halflings be a little bit closer to the human side, because they're always sort of appended to human civilizations in Galarian. So we did change the ears on this guy. So next slide is going to have this is the painted version, and you can see on this one some details in the weapons that and in the flute that I think we're missing from the original. You must have some thoughts about this musical notation on the dagger.
As far as I'm aware, it's the do re mi fa so. So from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I don't. Yeah. I don't normally put pop culture references in my artwork, but I wanted some musical notes on the blade. So that was. So I was kind of searching around and thinking, well, you know, what's kind of simple that I could put on there. And I thought, it's got to be.
It's appropriate that this character has a little pop culture music Easter egg, because when we got your sketch in for this guy originally back on the first round of Pathfinder First Edition, we were kind of passing it around the office, and how this generally works is Sarah and James Jacobs, our creative director, maybe I'm in a meeting and we come up with like, okay, you know, this is the weapon the character should generally have, this is what it is, and maybe use these couple of main colors to differentiate from another character or what have you. And then Wayne just goes and essentially creates. And then, you know, there's that moment a few weeks later where Sarah kind of sends you a little text message, be like, hey, I got something to show you in my office. And then James and I like collide right outside her door to rush over, look over her shoulder at Wayne's new sketches. And we pass this guy around, and we said we need a name. And then generally people will suggest a few names, and then we'll narrow it down to a few favorites, and then they'll bring it to me, and I'll be like, I like that one or that one, and that's kind of how it works. And so we were looking at this guy, and he's a musician. He's got awesome sideburns that come down on almost to his mouth. And so his name is Lem because he reminded us of Lemmy from Motorhead. And so it'd be kind of rad if those notes were like the opening chords of the Ace of Spades. I'm going to pretend that it is. All right, so there is Lem. Any questions about Lem? All right, let's jump to the next one. This one is Seelah. One of my favorite iconic characters for a lot of reasons. I think the cover of Ultimate Campaign might be my favorite painting that you've done for Pathfinder, and for a lot of different reasons. The first is it's composed beautifully. The second is it's one of those awesome Wayne Reynolds paintings where there's a great central figure, but there's all these little bonus details and the little randos, you know, on the side, and I kind of like that. You know, that's always fun to look at.
in the background, and Elaine's banners in the background.
I didn't even know that, right? And so that's why we hosted these seminars, is I like to learn about our own stuff. But so here we have Seelah. A couple of things really stand out to me about Seelah. The colors on this are perfect on the original. We really think it's important to have representation of all different types of folks in our brand and in our characters. And I don't, you know, when we're sitting around looking at this, it was hard at that time. So this is what 2007 we're probably working on this. Not a lot of dark-skinned, armored warriors, right? I'm hard pressed to I'm sure there are many, and subsequently there have been some that, like Valkyrie and things like that, I think have certainly was not necessarily inspired by Seelah, but it's a very much of the moment, and we wanted to make sure that people, no matter who they are, could look at Pathfinder and see themselves in the game and in the brand. And we've seen that at Gen Con and at shows and things like that. Characters like Seelah, characters like KYRA. I've actually seen gamers cry about that kind of a thing because they've went their whole lives without having that level of representation. So that's an important part of Seelah. The most important of it is she's just badass. It's just a kick-ass illustration, you know? And so this one, to me, is kind of another one of those ones where we said, well, What?
Yeah.
Wayne, can I just pay you a bunch of money to draw Seelah again? And so he did. And this is actually a very interesting bit of art direction. So can we go back to that original slide real quick? The most important element of this picture that you cannot see is the front of the shield. And I don't think I even thought of that when we got this illustration originally. It's like, this is sweet. Then we started sending this illustration to other artists and said, okay, we need, you know, Seelah in this pose and in this pose. And there are definitely a few different fronts of this shield in different Pathfinder products. And I think it was eventually, I think there is a look at it in the one you did where it's the Black Dragon fight in Crimson
the
Throne.
front of the shield gets shown before or Curse of the Crimson Throne.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
It's the one. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the one where the vampires are attacking.
Oh, right. The one that we used as a huge Pathfinder Society banner. It had a visual error in the file, and you could come to the Paizo thing and see a nice, gross thing. Yeah, little history lesson. That was fun. But that was a great illustration, and that didn't always like. Sarah and I were learning how to do this too, right? And so when we did this one, we said, let's get the front of it right on the control image. Really, really important. And I think that also, this shield might be responsible in part for us getting those detailed sheets on all of the equipment, because, you know, one of the things, and I'll talk about it later when we get to SEONI, but it's not just has Wayne done a good illustration, but is that illustration able to be replicated by artists who have a different level of talent or a different amount of time or a different whatever than Wayne, and it's important to get that thing right. So if we go to the color, which is almost exactly like the sketch, here we have it. Same character, pretty awesome. Has anything really changed about this outfit?
Not much.
Was that always
changed.
there? That sort of chain
thing?
Yeah.
That's always been there. The sword's pretty much the same shape. The shield has slightly changed. It's gotten slightly smaller, because I think the original description for Seelah described it as a tower shield,
probably,
and
which is much bigger than most of us really.
Yeah. It's not really a tower shield anymore. And also, I took the sort of asymmetrical circle out of the shield. In real world history, that circle in the shield. So the shield's based on New Kingdom Egypt
I
shields,
can see that. Yeah,
kind of inverted, and they had like a circle in there. And they were used by spearmen, so they'd have the shield and then the spear going through the circle. But AMIRI doesn't have a spear, so why does she need a circle in the shield? So that got removed, and then I put some details onto her scabbard. So a scabbard is a wooden scabbard with beaten bronze over the top, which has one of the tasks of AMIRI. Is that how it's?
Iomade.
Iomade.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, and again, and it's funny because
it's the knights that she rescues from the vampires.
Oh, yeah. So when this came in, and this was probably number 7 or 8 in terms of the iconic characters, wasn't in the first batch of 6.
No.
So it was a Curse of the Crimson Throne when we introduced the first 12 iconics in the first 12 volumes of Pathfinder. And this one, it's all coming back to me. I was super excited about, because Iomade, I had made up that god, you know, and I'd only made up 3 or 4 gods in the whole thing, and I wasn't involved in like deciding what this character would be. And it came in, it's like, oh, there's this sweet looking character for this god you made up, and that was a really great moment for me as a nerd and as a publisher. So any questions about the champion, Seelah? She's a champion now instead of a paladin, because that's a 2nd edition change. Paladin is still what a lawful good champion is called. There's also redeemers and liberators for neutral good and chaotic good. And it looks like we have a question from the audience.
Are there going to be any other maybe kind of like sub-iconics for the other types of champions, the Liberator and the Redeemer and whatever other non-good champions may be released?
There will now. That was a good question. There really should be.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's a great question. Yeah, you know, that was a fairly late change during the playtests to implement these things. It's a push-pull between sort of the traditionalists to say, you know, paladins are always lawful good, and anything that's not lawful good is not a paladin, and other folks, you know, saying, well, we just like it. We want to play a neutral good paladin. What the hell, you know? And paladins were exclusively lawful good going back years and years and years, predating even Pathfinder. And so we did try to kind of split the baby on that one and say, well, everybody gets a little bit of what they want. And there's still a couple of guys with 9 bow fiddlesticks. But in general, we want to give people more opportunities to make the character they want to play. And that's kind of part of Pathfinder Second Edition's philosophy too. We don't want to be there with our arms crossed and be like, you can't do that, you know. And so I would expect to see more champions of even non-good alignments in the not so distant future. Okay, let's jump to the next one, which is KYRA. KYRA is a cleric of Sarenrae, the goddess of redemption and sunlight. Wayne, Sarah, anything to say about the original sketch on KYRA? Or painting of KYRA?
Well, I don't think from the original to the second edition, I don't think anything really much changed on her.
We didn't change.
I mean, she's...
Well, let's take a look. So here's...
Yeah.
Why is it going the wrong direction? Okay. So if we jump to the next sketch, you can see there's the full turnaround. A little bit more body in her headdress, I would say. That seems, maybe it's just because we're seeing it from behind.
Yeah, maybe.
But this was one where I think we said it's not broken. Don't mess with it. And there was a real moment that was a eye opener for me as well. So if you look at the back of the cloak, that circular sun design, which is really well done. This is one of those details that sometimes scares me a little bit when I think about what these illustrations, the life they need to have beyond the paintings, because one of the things that we knew we wanted to do from the beginning, and ultimately we're able to do, was to work with a miniatures producer, in this case WizKids, on pre-painted plastic miniatures of our iconic characters. But that pattern scared the hell out of me, because look at that. I mean, if you look closely, Wayne, is there even actually... Oh, there is an inner circle there, but there's like, what, 12 triangles around the thing? And it's like, you know, oh my God, is that an individual paint touch every single time they would do it? I've seen some of Wayne's Warhammer armies. No, I know. Wayne, we're talking about my problem for just a second. So I've seen Wayne's Warhammer armies, and he could paint that, but factory, maybe not. And so, but, and this was the kind of level up, and the interesting moment for me is the way that they do miniatures with intricate designs like this is actually a process that's called a tampo. And so they basically stamp it onto the miniature. And so it's identical every time. And when WizKids sent us back that first set of iconic characters with the KYRA, VALEROS, EZREN, and MERISIEL, they nailed it. I mean, it was perfect. And knowing that they could pull that off made me less conservative about the types of designs we could afford to do, because as the technology is getting better and better, you know, they can almost match, Wayne, your original images. So that's exciting there. Let's go down one to the equipment. All right, any secrets in here, Wayne? I see there's a cool Sarenrae symbol worked into her satchel.
There is, yeah. No, her equipment's fairly straightforward, really. You know, she's got a phylactery, which is, if you don't know what a phylactery is, it's a religious object that's hollow and usually contains either some sort of religious artifact. It could contain oil, bones, ash. But yeah, it's kind of all fairly straightforward, really.
So one thing I want to pull really quick here, the scroll cases. I think back of like the way the image that's in our heads when we're playing these games and things, and when I think of scroll case, I generally am just thinking of like, I don't know, like a leather little map case or something. Really, and that's because I have no imagination and I'm not an artist. But you look at what you do, and you just elevate the scroll. Something as simple as a scroll case has got this beautiful design to it. Did you pull any particular inspiration from anything from your researches?
It's due to some of the research that I did. So these are kind of like Middle Eastern and Far Eastern style scroll cases that these are made from wood and then painted, or they have gilt on them with brass or bronze kind of caps that the scrolls fit inside, and they become weatherproof then. And I just thought, oh yeah, these are really neat. Some of them are made from metal, so you get kind of like these bronze or brass scroll cases that weigh a ton.
That's really cool. Sarah, anything to add on this one? All right, then if we advance, this is the final KYRA. Again, it's very much just I don't know. It's the same one.
I think
but
the only
better.
that majorly changed was her pose.
Right.
'Cause
She doesn't
her-
have quite a stiff
Right.
arm like she really was, which is cool. It's like turning on dead or something, but
Yeah.
this is a more naturalistic
Fits
pose,
on a
I
page
think.
better.
Yeah,
Well, and that's there you go. This does all have a very practical purpose, ladies and gentlemen.
I changed the male at.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
At the bottom, so you can see kind of like her pantaloons.
I love that those pants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they're kind of like these really sort of baggy Middle Eastern kind of leggings, pants. They're kind of really kind of baggy, and then you can see her boots a lot better now, which
Yep.
they're called rack. They're armored boots, so they have like a metal plates inside, and they're kind of like these sort of really kind of baggy kind of. They're kind of horrible to walk in, but they look cool.
But they're easy to airwalk in.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump to the next one. That is LINI. Here's the original. She is the iconic druid. She's a gnome. And there is her animal companion. And Sarah, Wayne, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think much changes with LINI as well.
We kind of gnomed her up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So we brought her into line with
the
P2 gnomes.
So if we jump to the next one, you'll see some of what he's talking about. I think she looks a little more alien and a little more fey, which is kind of the idea.
That was the idea, yeah.
When you painted the original, she's got like a collection of wands or twigs or what was it in your mind when you painted it? Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The little case with the twigs in.
Yeah.
Because she was a druid, that she'd collect kind of different.
Right, you can see it in the back there and the.
She'd collect different sort of twig staves and I thought, well, yeah, she'd kind of use twigs for magic. You know, so maybe if she was casting a spell, she'd kind of get out a twig and like throw the twig, you know, and that would turn into whatever spell that, you know, she was kind of doing, you know. So she'd have like a yew twig or a beechwood twig or a rowan twig.
So I think that's a good example of the back and forth that happens between having a great creative like Wayne working on these illustrations and then pumping them back into the staff and have them thinking about it, because I believe it's because you put those twigs on there. I think that's the reason why Pathfinder gnomes are all obsessed with collecting different weird things. And so, you know, that's just like you had that idea that was mostly a LINI idea. We looked at it and said, that is a great idea. How about all gnomes have a weird collection? And that's become part of the hallmarks of a Pathfinder gnome. So it's a synergistic process. And Wayne's been as important, if not, as important as any member of the Pathfinder full-time staff in terms of developing this, not just within the context of the original illustrations, but what they imply to the world and where we've extrapolated them. So it's just great to be working with you, Wayne. And here's the final.
Good to be working with you too, Eric.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So here's the final. Cool pose, very clear size between her and the cat, which is something artists sometimes have a little trouble with, and so that's great to have the scale in the illustration. And anybody have any questions about LINI? Yeah.
Have a name?
Sarah?
Is it Dragami?
Dragami.
Yeah.
So, yes, Sarah named the
I
cat.
did not.
You didn't?
No, I did not.
Mike McCarter named the
Yes.
cat, yeah. So Mike was one of our early developers at Paizo, and I think he pulled that name from some thing he loves or whatever. And so it was some anime thing or whatever, and we're like, okay, I guess. And so that's Dragami. It's a cute name. It's not that cute when it's snarling, but when he's not snarling, he's adorable. Okay, let's jump ahead. Don't have a ton of time. So I'm going to show you some stuff I don't think anyone's ever seen before, and this one is the original sketch of Valeros from 2007. This was probably done around June or July of 2007, like probably about 6 days before we sent it to the printer. And this was largely, I would say, art directed by your predecessor, Sean Glenn. And the brief on this guy was we wanted a kind of devil may care fighter with two weapons, kind of patterned off of Mad Mardigan from Willow, was kind of the original idea. And Wayne, you can maybe refresh my memory, but when did the tankard come into play?
That was Sean's
Yeah.
idea. Yeah,
So Wayne did this great illustration, Sans, the tankard, and Sean was like, I think this guy should be a drunk, and so we gave him that pewter tankard, and that has become one of the identifying elements of the character. Certainly the hallmark of almost every characterization we've ever done of him in a comic or something like that. He's a drinker and all that, and so it's interesting how little individual elements of these equipment loadouts play into the development of these characters. And it's also interesting that many times, of course, those come from Wayne, but sometimes they come from Sarah or one of the developers. So it's a collaborative process, and that's been really fun. I don't think we've shown this off before, but it's not that unusual. If we can come to the next slide. The final actually looks exactly like it. So you've seen the painted version of it. This was the original Pathfinder illustration. In fact, the day we announced Pathfinder, when we also announced the Dragon and Dungeon were ending, this illustration along with SEONI was on the website. So this was the first thing anyone ever saw about Pathfinder. And we've always really loved Valeros. I think Valeros, because he was on the first cover, has kind of an emblematic guy of the brand. But we knew we needed to make some changes, in part because of some of the rules for Pathfinder Second Edition. So if we can advance to the next slide. Here is the second edition version of Valeros. There is a little 2 on his shield. I think that's a little Easter egg for the number of iterations we did on the shield, because the shield was a very important part. So here we have Valeros. It's got this little, what do you call this little thing on a boss on the shield. We did some more iterations. If we jump to the next thing, here's his equipment loadout. You see the front and the back of the shield. And then if we jump further, here is yet another version of the shield. We wanted to make sure we got the shape of the shield right. We wanted to make sure that we got the symbols and the colors and stuff on the shield really, really well. Shields are a huge part of Pathfinder Second Edition. We've completely revised how they work in the game to add a lot more depth to tactical combat and to give martial characters a bunch of fun things to do. And so there you see, how does he hold the shield? That's really important. Wayne knows more about weapons and armor than anybody I've ever met. He lives in the same city as one of the greatest collections of medieval weaponry in Europe. I can still say you guys are in Europe, at least for another couple weeks. And so we're extraordinarily lucky that he brings that depth of knowledge. Wayne knows not only the difference between the different types of armor, Wayne probably knows how to make that armor. I'm probably puffing you up a little bit, but Wayne has worn full plate armor before. Fair to say?
Yeah.
In fact, is it fair to say you own a suit of full plate armor?
I own a suit of full plate armor that's been made especially for me. So yeah, I can
go to the head of the class,
ride, jump, fall down in it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but not everyone is Wayne. And so we need to make stuff that other people are going to be able to replicate and understand. And so that's why it's important to show some of those artists. This is how the shield connects to the hand and what have you. Here we settled on a very simple design for the shield front. Again, that was intentional to be replicated. And when you got that bright red shield, that's the first thing someone's going to see. And that's part of the thinking on it, right?
That is part of it. Yeah, that is exactly part of it. And I came up with so many shield designs. I don't know. There must have been at least 100 shield designs. Just pages and pages of shield designs.
Right.
I go, hey, what about this one?
All right. So I need to move it along here because we're running out of time. So here's SAJAN, the original monk. Again, we really like this illustration. Pretty much perfect. Here is the sketch, and the next one is the final. Really feel like the color contrast on this is superior to the original. In terms of the values of the blue and the white. Nice job.
Thank you.
Any questions about the monk? All right. Next up, we have HARSK. HARSK is a very, very interesting character, and I'm glad we do have enough time to talk about this, because this is the one I think went through a lot of thinking and a lot of revisions and things that ended up significantly impacting the way that doors are presented in Pathfinder Second Edition. So here we have HARSK, lots of detail, great looking character. Wayne, again, putting a teapot on there. That gives him a ton of character. Here's a dwarf who's not an alcoholic. I don't even think he speaks with a Scottish accent, frankly. So a little bit non-stereotypical typical. If we advance to the next slide, here is one of the first shots at HARSK in Second Edition. I don't know that we've ever shown this one before, but the nose is different, and that was something that that came out of the concepting of the ancestries that we did. One of the important things we want to make sure that if you're looking at a Pathfinder dwarf, it's at least distinguishable in some ways from just a random dwarf. We gain a lot when we inherit these things from just raw vanilla fantasy, but we also there can be a sort of genericism that can creep in from time to time. So we gave some physiological features to the dwarf, and then we're looking at this and we're like, this is almost perfect. And then we started focusing in on the dagger on his belt, and we had decided that we wanted the dwarf's clan to be a big part of Second Edition. And so you can see on that illustration that's up on the screen right now, there is the first appearance there of the dwarf clan dagger. So that has got a special stone affiliated with the family built into the hilt. It's got that squared off scabbard, and that is something that every dwarf has. And now they might lose it, and that's a good sign that you're dealing with a bad dwarf. You did some dwarf weapon stuff, so there's dwarven faces built into the axes and what have you. And by the way, can we go back 2 slides here? Yeah, there you go. So Wayne pulls this in one day and goes, yeah, I think this is HARSK. And then we talk a little bit more and we say, Wayne, can you maybe add that dagger we were talking about? And then like 2 days later, okay, go forward 2 slides, back one. There you go. We get this, and Wayne's like, yeah, I just redrew the whole guy. Okay, cool. And so here he is. He's got 2 weapons instead of the crossbow. That's appropriate for the ranger. Crossbow actually is appropriate for the ranger in Second Edition as well, more so I think even than first. And here you go. He's great looking. We love him. That's HARSK. Here's his equipment. Really good look at that crossbow. Awesome job there, Wayne. You got the tea kettle. You know, I don't have a long time to linger, but there's that dagger I was talking about. All right, so and there's the final. Brighter hair, which is cool.
Brighter hair.
The tartan is much more up front. That was another element of the culture that we wanted to bring forward, and that dwarven dagger there is just amazing. So love the new HARSK. All right, MERISIEL. Here we go. One of our most popular iconics, if not the most popular iconic. Certainly our creative director, James's favorite iconic character. One of the neat things on this character is I believe these banners, do they have some kind of connection to Calistria?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so that's her goddess. Just going to keep jumping through here. Here's a early sketch of MERISIEL. This is a good example of one of the things that concerned me a little bit is the intricacy of the hilt on the sword. We needed to simplify that. I just knew in my heart of hearts after approving 80 issues of comics and stuff that other people were not going to be able to pull that off, and I didn't want to have them change it every single time. So here we have another revised sketch. I really do like this pose. We didn't end up going with this, I don't think.
No, we didn't.
But I really like this pose. And then here we go, some equipment for MERISIEL. I wish I had an hour to talk about this, but Bullman arriving tells me we're already behind schedule. And here we have MERISIEL. And the colors on the banner are even more in line with the colors of Calistria at that point. What's going on with these shoes and the legs? That's an interesting change.
I changed the footwear so that it was more in keeping with the elven ancestry. The kind of like the costume elements were repeated on her legs. Similar to how they were on her arms. I always felt that MERISIEL's boots didn't quite fit the character. And since illustrating MERISIEL, we'd got the iconic swashbuckler Jarell, who also has a pair of kind of fold down boots. And I thought, well, Jarell's got some cool fold down boots. Then MERISIEL doesn't really need hers. She needs elven boots.
Right.
Yeah.
The boots of an elven kind, you might say. And look at that basket hilt, still plenty complex. I'm not a total monster. Okay. If we advance to the next thing, this is something I really wanted to show off because I just remembered I had this on my computer from 2007. I don't think we've ever showed this illustration ever before. And this is the very first illustration of Seoni.
First take of
In
Seoni.
fact, this is one of the first drawings for Pathfinder ever. So we started there. We ended up in the next slide here. This is Seoni in all her glory. Great character, very popular with the communities on the cover of the core rulebook. Not 100% 2019, I guess I would say. And so one of the things that we wanted to do with this character, I think maybe Seoni fell into a bit of a trap, and that is in first edition, she's a sorcerer. And the key ability score of sorcerer is charisma, and and so the idea of like people will often conflate that with sort of superficial beauty or what have you. I'm not saying you did, but I think maybe that's she's maybe a little boobalicious, but like it's because she's a sorcerer. And love the design, but we really wanted to update it, and I think that was mutual among all of us. And so when we did that, here's a first take. Wayne put that together. Really going in the right direction on all of the making it a cool character, making it not hypersexualized. But again, speaking for myself, approving a bunch of comic artists and stuff, whatever's going on in the center of that waist is not replicable by people of lesser godlike powers. And so I was concerned about that. And also there was some detail work on the staff that we wanted to simplify to make miniatures easier to do. There is an element of commerce to this. And there we go. So now we're moving toward it. We're getting closer and closer. In fact, I think this is close to the original, or close to the final. But again, maybe a little more complexity can be stripped away from that staff. Then we jump to this. Here's the final equipment loadout. Really, really loving this. This is, by the way, oh man, I wish I had a drawing of Seoni's dagger about 5 years ago. So now we finally got that, which is great. And then here's the final Seoni. I'm really, really happy with this. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is we didn't want to just like cover her in head to toe. Part of the goal here is with these tattoos, they play into her magical traditions and stuff. So we wanted, if she was going to show skin, we wanted to show the skin where those tattoos come into play.
We had to completely remove her sleeves.
Yep.
Because with the mantle and the sleeves, we were just losing
all
the
right.
tattoos on our
and we're
arms.
almost done here. I got one more character to go through. This is EZREN. He's a wizard. He's an old man. Hilariously, when we did this in 2007, we were all much younger people, and someone's like, yeah, this guy's 44. Which really pisses me off because that's how old I am right now. And it's like, yeah, old man, yeah. I feel it more and more every day. Okay, so there is EZREN. This was the first take on him. And this is a dicey one, I think, because it does go up against issues of representation, but having eyeglasses on the character, and it had put in the Nez Pierce eyeglasses that just kind of sit. Can't do it. The people are going to fuck that up for sure. So we pulled that off his face, and here he is in all of his glory. And here we go. Look at all that equipment.
Yeah, he's got
Take some screen caps of that, folks, on the stream, and you can study it in detail, but we ain't got time to talk about it now. And here he is, final version of EZREN. Again, the color contrast is a little bit higher on this character, but otherwise, still the same guy you love, except his cane has turned into a staff to play into some of the other stuff with Second Edition, yeah? Any final thoughts on EZREN, guys?
Nope.
All right, dudes, we're way over time. Thank you so much. Wanted to get through the whole presentation, and we did. Woo! Have a great time at Gen Con, folks, and hope to see you down in the hall or in the Sagamore Ballroom.